How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I've got a very special guest for you all. Today, I'm joined by the founder of the Hard to Kill program. Today, I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend that is Marc Rhodes. How are you doing?
Really well, thank you, mate. And now a little bit under pressure, given how you've just introduced me.
you can just have that recording as like a ringtone or anything like that. You
Every
can
time I walk in a room, I'm going to get people to play that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll edit that up for you. It's all right. But how are you? What have you been up to? What's been happening in your world recently?
Mate, I'm really, really well. Thank you for asking. World at the moment is kind of business as usual for me, which is training towards an intent, obviously doing bits and moving things forwards, reference to the Hard to Kill program. So everything feels pretty good, pretty intentional, pretty purposeful, not without challenge, but challenges that I'm enjoying solving, mate. So yeah, all good.
Nice. And have you got any challenges, any events coming up from obviously what you've done previously?
Um, Short answer, yes. So I believe it's just a little over 2 weeks now, I'm heading over to Nevada to compete in the tactical games,
Nice.
which is a bit of a curveball. Got a client inside the program who was looking for someone to do it as part of a team event. And this was maybe 6, 8 months ago. I was like, yeah, fuck it, why not? And then, time has marched on. So my training at the moment is leaned really quite extensively towards work capacity. So like strength and work capacity. For those who are listening, I don't know what your listenership's like in kind of the States. Many in the States will be familiar with it, but it's owned by Under Armour. It is essentially CrossFit with guns. Okay, it's archetypal American kind of thing. It's fucking awesome. Sorry about the swearing, but yeah, it looks incredible given the social presence of it. But essentially, it's like CrossFit, WODs, throwdowns, but you're in full tactical gear, and it's straight from sort of that WOD into a stressed shoot, and you march for accuracy and time as well as like your actual points in the competition. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's gonna be cool.
Ah, cool. Yeah, it sounds exciting. And
Mm.
is that a one? I'm not 100% sure on that, but is that a one-off event? Does that lead to other events, or how does that work?
They're all over the States now. So it was pretty new to me when Jeff, my client, brought it to my attention. I took one look at the Instagram and I was like, this is a slice of me. Like, let's do it. And I think, and I might well be doing an injustice here saying this, but I think there was maybe 15 fixtures throughout like their kind of competitive season,
Yeah.
all over the United States. And it's got multiple different like offshoots, different standards of competition. I'm sure they've got like a sniper or a marksmanship competition. They've got tons going on, training packages for it, like pipelines in terms of like training programs heading into it. It's a really well designed thing, as you can imagine, from Under Armour. So yeah, it looks like a pretty cool thing. I think it'll probably be a one and done for me, obviously, because it's not next door. We're flying over to Arizona, doing a training package, then going to Nevada. But really cool life experience. So I couldn't say no.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds really cool. And with that, you might find that I'm a big fan of tangents when we end up doing this as well. But have you found that from the clients that you're working with, or from you entering this as well, that there's a lot more competitions coming up like that, because that mindset around training, that there's a couple of more events coming up for that, for people in the forces and those sorts of things, a little bit more of the tactical training.
I mean, I think what's brought that to the forefront of everyone's mind is High Rocks. Like High Rocks is doing phenomenally well. So not necessarily within our client population, although we do have some who do High Rocks and do extraordinarily well. But across the fitness industry as a collective, I'm seeing more people. Well, it's hard to say because, you and I are probably very similar in our consumption of social media. It's maybe a bit of an artificial sample. Maybe I'm living in a bit of a bubble where it definitely seems like, from what I'm being presented with, there's a lot more people that are doing fitness related competition, which I'm all for. But I don't know in the wider world and outside of my little bubble of consumption, because I only follow like 100 people on Instagram, so I don't really see a great lot. But it certainly feels like more people are doing it, and I'm pretty pro that. I think it's obviously off the back of the lockdowns as well. People are actually allowed to do that sort of stuff and maybe have an inclination towards it because they realize how much they missed it, and that social element of sport and competition when we weren't allowed to do it. So yeah, it definitely seems like there's an increasing intake or like participation of those sort of things from my perspective.
Yeah, I'd agree with that with the High Rock side of things, because one of my good friends is a head coach of a gym in Liverpool, and he did one, and then a lot of his members have started doing it now as well. And yeah, I think a lot more people are getting bought into that. But it's like what you say, sometimes you see something and then all of a sudden you see a lot more of it, and all of a sudden everyone's doing it. So yeah, I'd agree with that. Obviously, I did quite a brief introduction. I know we've chatted a little bit about what you've got coming up and those sorts of things. But for everyone listening who might not know your background in terms of training, how you got involved in coaching, obviously the Hard to Kill program, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself?
100%. So from a really sort of high contour position, I got into the fitness industry proper in 2013 it would have been. So prior to that, I was engaged in relatively good standard of rugby, and then went away through Army Officer Selection Board, and then eventually enlisted in the Parachute Regiment, was medically discharged from that. And I was like, well, the one conjoining factor has always been sort of health and fitness. So back then, the level 3 qual was like a 6-week course. Did that, realized I absolutely knew nothing. So then I went straight back into education and did the National Academy of Sports Medicine, the NASM certifications. That opened a door for me. Ended up working at the High Performance Center at Nottingham University in like an S&C role as an intern. Turned out through association, actually knew one of the guys who ran a program for multidisciplinarians and Olympians and decathletes at Loughborough. So did a little bit of consultancy there. Then, kind of decided, if I'm totally honest, I wasn't really getting the juice from the squeeze in the strength world. So set up kind of independently just as a coach. Then moved from Lincoln. Don't know if anybody here knows Lincoln, but it's really quite a small town. So if you're very driven and ambitious, this was before online coaching was even really a thing. Yeah. I had to move to an area where essentially there was a greater population density. So that brought me to Manchester maybe 5 or 6 years ago now. Worked at a couple of gyms there, and then essentially just thought, like I'm capable of having a much greater impact, and I want the freedoms associated with it. Because by this point, you're 6 years into, working fucking 70 hours a week, and you're like, right, there's got to be more freedom to it than this. So set up online, couple of iterations of online programs, and then launched the Hard to Kill program nearly 3 years ago now, and that brings us up to the present day.
Nice. And how did the Hard to Kill program come about? Because I know, obviously, following your content, looking at the website and those sorts of things, what kind of made you focus on that? And what kind of made you focus on that?
I'll be really transparent. It was a borderline breakdown, mate. So I took the route that I think probably most coaches who are ready to be honest with themselves took, whereby you're working with general population, and then it's actually relative. In fact, it's really easy to scale that to a degree of quote unquote success. And on paper, the business was incredible. Client numbers were healthy, really strong. In fact, like the financials were really good commercially. The business was incredible. But personally, I was perhaps the most unhappy I've ever been.
Right.
At that point in time, I was training and preparing for like a Herculean triathlon. It was going to be immense, the volume that we were doing, and I was legitimately sleeping about 3 hours a night. Wow. Heart palpitations, eye twitches, just genuinely the most stressed I've ever been in my entire life, because I was truly deeply unhappy with how I was turning up in the world, what I was being forced to speak about, the level of problems I was solving on a daily basis. I had absolutely no inclination to want to do it. And then I was actually on a training camp in the Lake District with a good friend of mine and fellow fitness professional, Joe Parrish, who runs a high performance coach, incredible guy, still a very good friend to this day. And I had kind of a breakdown, but a breakdown that was immediately followed by a breakthrough. So I was working with a mentor at the time, who now is actually a great person, friend of mine, incredible person. And I essentially came to this conclusion. I was like, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life like this. This is not how I fucking live. Yeah. Rung him up. He was like, mate, well, make sure you're safe from a numbers perspective. Then I wanted to go through everyone that you don't care about. And that's, kind of take that tongue in cheek, as in like whose problems you don't love to solve. Mm-hmm. Who you feel is adding to this pressure, and you're going to basically politely say, I'm going a new direction. Thank you for everything, but we're going to leave it there. So I did that. And within sort of an hour, I think I'd let about 60% of my clients go. Obviously, wow. Refunded anyone who was in credit with me, and that was unbelievable, because I'd not slept properly for a couple of weeks. And I came back into that room, and there was maybe 6 of us in that room, and you can ask any of them independently, offline or online, either or, they'll verify, like a different man with more energy than they've known for months walked into the room, because I finally kind of had the space, the freedom, the permission to now lean into what I really truly wanted to do. And that was the Hard to Kill program. But in on the back burner for a while, but I had all those limiting beliefs of I can't do this and why should it be me, and imposter syndrome of there's people out there who are better qualified, who are, been to fucking 10 different war zones and done all this cool crap. And I was like, well, none of them are doing this. So fuck it. Like, I'm here to help people and I want to live my life in this way. So that was the beginning of the Hard to Kill program. That's where the Hard to Kill program actually got its name, because, I've gotten to where I've gotten through multiple iterations and quite painful and challenging rejections and failures. So that's where the Hard to Kill comes from. And then on that day, I basically made a promise to myself that I'll never trade my happiness for money ever again. And counterintuitively, that's probably the best commercial strategy you could ever have, because you know exactly who you are, what you're about, and what will generate your happiness, and who you want to work with. And I believe that's magnetic, but it's authentic. So the breakthrough always comes after the breakdown, but it was a pretty severe breakdown in the moment. But that was circa 3 years ago now, and that leads us to where we are today, mate.
Yeah. Oh, nice. That's an awesome story. I think with that, I quite like that, breakdown to then have a breakthrough. I think, one thing that always, for myself, coming from a rugby background as well, one of the first things my very first coach told me, you're always going to learn more than a loss than you are a win, because then you can go back, right, what didn't we do so well? And I think that kind of lesson has stuck with me, when things don't go wrong, or when things go wrong, sorry, you've got to learn from that and think, right, what is it going to go from there? There's kind of a couple of things just to touch on from that. For the coaches, for the PTs listening, once you'd had that breakthrough, how did that then impact your, I don't know if a motivation or drive is the right word I'm looking for, but how did that impact sort of, the investment then you put into the program, but then also how did that then impact your own training, the quality of service, how you were able to, produce the high standard of service that, you provide now?
Mm-hmm. Awesome question. So look, I'm a pretty straight shooter, and I'm a pretty open book, so I'll just fucking say how it is.
Yeah.
I perceive the health and fitness industry and personal training industry and coaching industry to probably have the highest incidence of mental health issues in the people working within it. Okay. Ordinarily, there is a driving factor as to why we get into this space in the first place. Okay. And it's not always light energy, put it that way. We aspire to be heard and seen, like a great deal of people do, but then we're also like conjoining that with our capacity to acquire resources. So now people are feeling threatened, they're not feeling seen, and people get really unhappy and very stressed and very pressurized. I was one of those people, and I know so many coaches who live month to month just fucking terrified. And it's because of that they will essentially work with anybody and everybody, and they're not able to be their true authentic selves. Because of that, they have to dilute who it is that they are, elements of their personality, and what it is they're happy to talk about. Because if they were to truly be themselves inside their community group or to their clients, that would immediately create a disconnect. Their clients would be like, I'm not sure if you're the coach for me, etc., so on and so forth. So they're kind of trading their own authenticity for commercial gain. And that's not anything like a smear. That's me being totally honest and me making objective analysis based on me having been there and knowing exactly how it feels. Yeah. So inside the client group that you've got, however that's organized, if you can't be your authentic self, then it's exhausting, because you constantly have to have the mask on. You're constantly pretending to be a homogenized version of yourself so that clients aren't displeased with you. And you've probably got 3, 4, maybe even 10 different factions of types of clients within a program that are all going to the bracket of general population. So you can't be yourself. You're tired. You're not fully invested in it. You're just not playing to your greatest potential, because obviously, if there's anything on the continuum of fear in your mind, you will not be expansive and creative and happy. So if you've got low level anxiety or fear or scarcity mindedness, you're not going to be performing to your greatest potential. So when you kind of face that absolute breakdown, when you realize, well, that's not the life that I want for myself anymore, and as a result, you get this really high energy, you have a degree of happiness and fulfillment. And it's what I refer to in scientific terms as being unfuckwithable, because you're no longer there for the pound. Like, you're there because you want to be truly happy and you want to solve problems with people you truly care about. So that allows you to be your total authentic self, which means your energy isn't, you're not untirable, but essentially you have exponential more energy on a daily basis on every level, like from like a metabolic level in terms of your ability to work through days, and just from a spiritual level. And then I'm getting a little bit tangential here, but I truly believe if you've got a spiritual goal that's important enough to you and large enough for you, then you will overcome any tactical level challenge of like clients leaving, tax bills, all that sort of stuff. All of this is noise. It doesn't really matter. You're like, well, okay, that is what it is, but I want that really bad. So I'm trying to figure that out. And I'm happy in the pursuit of it because these are my people. This is something I really want to achieve. It's something I'm passionate about. And it's essentially is me. It is a commercial expression of me and how I like to solve problems and my ability to innovate and help people. So in terms of how I turn up, all the way from like the highest level of strategic planning right down to tactical implementation of how I solve problems and the conversation I have with clients, it's literally just night and day, like absolutely night and day. And as a result, your ability to deal with challenge and undulation and turmoil and bounce back and demonstrate resilience is just, again, night and day because you truly care about the product, about the people, about your life and the vision that you have, versus someone who's just terrified, maybe has no one there to make them feel heard and seen, maybe doesn't truly deeply understand that they are good enough to be there yet, and has also then got issues with resource acquisition, like fucking hell, like can I pay my gym rent this month, or can I go on that holiday I want to go on next week, and all that sort of stuff. So that's how that's turned up. In terms of how I train people, well, they're much more closely aligned with the kinds of things that I like to do. So, we believe that form follows function. I can't remember the last time I did a body transformation, despite having worked in the world's best transformation gym. There's a chain of them all over the world. Some people might pick up what I'm talking about there, but I won't mention it on air because they tried to sue me once. Yeah, they tried to sue everyone, mate. So yeah, like I haven't done that in ages. We just believe that form follows function. So we're looking at, are we training in a way that creates energy or burns it? Are we nourishing ourselves in a way that, again, facilitates performance, recovery, cognition, or a way that, strips that away from us? So yeah, that's kind of how I turn up now in comparison to how I used to turn up.
Yeah, I think with that, just one thing when you were talking about sort of the mindset side of things and trying to strip back the things that the fear and those sorts of things. I actually read a book. I think it's called Liquid Thinking. I'll have to double check what it is. And it's kind of that thing of just changing your thought process a little bit, because I think sometimes as well, and probably more speaking from a coach to a client point of view, people can put their efforts into things that ultimately aren't getting them where they want to be. So they're putting the effort in. There's no denying their effort, but it's actually just put into the wrong place. From that, with the by obviously, when you mentioned the breakdown to break through, what was there any challenges sort of after that? Because obviously, for people listening, they'll be thinking about, okay, so this is what I need to do. But were there any challenges on the back of that? Or because, like what you mentioned about, you had the energy to be able to do this, you had that sort of clearer thought process, you stripped everything to the side. Was there any obstacles that came in afterwards, or did you have that energy to be able to solve those problems because you had that clearer focus? If that kind of makes sense.
Many, 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 many challenges, mate.
Yeah.
The time I launched the Hard to Kill program, certainly in the United Kingdom, there was nothing like what I was doing. It has not been done before, because I essentially dared to say, well, why can't I run an online coaching business and not put transformation photos up? Why can't I run an online coaching business that talks more about the psychology of performance than just eat your macros and lift the weights? Because that's moronic. Like, that doesn't really help anyone. It's just tactical information, but most people have an implementation issue, which is in the top 2 inches. So the first 6 months of marketing the Hard to Kill program was spent almost entirely explaining to people what it is and what we do, right? Because there was no point of reference. Now, most business mentors will tell you, oh, you need an elevator pitch. You should be able to summarize what your business is and does in like one sentence, as if you were basically going up in the elevator, someone of, oh, I do this. But counterintuitively, I actually believe it can often be beneficial if you can't summarize it in one sentence, because it shows that you're not just following a trend. You're not in a typecast. You are innovating and you are finding new angles and new perspectives. Now, when lockdown hit, when was that, like end of 2019 into 2020?
Yeah.
That was a double-edged sword, because myself and everyone who was working as a fitness professional at that time was probably put under more pressure than we've ever been, like in comprehensible memory. This is a siren's gone past. Hopefully you didn't hear that. Incomprehensible memory. However, it was almost always, it was also an enormous opportunity for those who were willing to put their head above the parapet and say, I'll lead. Like I've got some fucking stuff that can help people. And that was actually kind of serendipitous, because everything that we spoke about, yeah, we deliver S&T, nutrition and stuff, but that's just a kind of tactical implementation of what we talk about in the top 2 inches. So we were able to, well, I was able to stand up, and yeah, it was long days and I ended up burning out. But, I was working 7 days a week, about 14, 15 hours a day, just putting the message out there of like, this is what we do. This is how resilience works. This is how you persevere. These are the 5 ingredients of grit. This is what you need to do. Blah, 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 blah. Getting some great guests on, going on Instagram live every day, all that sort of stuff. And the message was just extraordinarily well received. But then again, we had more problems, was problems of scale. So all these people who now are interested in working with us. So then, like at the moment, at that moment in time, it was just me, just a one-man band. So I was doing all of, the attraction, the conversion, the delivery, and all of the facets within that. So then you get new challenges of, okay, well, what elements can I start to hand off? Like, how can I get a VA to help me with that admin? I need a graphic designer to deliver like some of the tools and resources in the program. So you're basically doing like 5 people's job at once, plus your own, plus building the processes of how other people can do parts of your job. So I did end up with burnout then, like, and not just the way burnout's banded around these days, like legit couldn't get off a sofa for 3 weeks, like absolutely, truly shattered, totally exhausted, because I'd kind of been burning the candle at both ends as it was, promising myself that we were about to go on holiday to Australia for a month, and then lockdown hit. So it was like, mate, I know you're on empty, but suck it up, sunshine. Like, you got to go. So I grafted again. And then, came out from burnout. That was all good. And then again, it was just a constant iteration. So like, right, we solved one problem, and then what's the next? What's the next? What's the next? So if anyone who's listened to this is a PT and a coach, and we're under this illusion that you complete it, that you get to a level of like income or commercial success or impact or client number, and you complete it and it's over, please get yourself that out of your head, right? It's much harder if you have the expectation that eventually one day it gets easy. It doesn't at all. The levels of problems change. So maybe you haven't got problems of survival anymore. You've got like higher level challenges of like, right, I don't know, like we're looking to move more into the States right now. So that's quite an enormous project. And there's a lot of things that are going into that, et cetera, so on and so forth. But it never gets necessarily easier, that the problems get different. And as long as you have framed that in your head and you found a way to enjoy the levels of problems that you're solving, then you're going to be sweet. Like, you're going to be absolutely fine. But if you're already finding yourself being like, I fucking hate these people that I'm working with, I hate what I do on a daily basis, then you're going to run into problems. Okay, if you're just doing it for money, I've done that and it doesn't end well. So yeah, does that answer your question? I know I went off on a bit of a
no. I think the last bit that you said there, with the having that of the what's the best way to say it, when we're talking about solving problems, I can't remember the phrase how it was, but it was kind of never say that you've I know the phrase is, if you think you're the smartest one in the room, go into a next room. But I heard a different phrase of, never say that it's mastered. Never say that I've got this sussed. I've got it nailed. Because then all of a sudden, that's when standards will end up dropping off, because then you'll get complacent. Whereas
you're obviously familiar with the All Blacks, right? And there's Gilbert and Oku was their like mental performance coach for all of their like winning years. And he's famous for saying you aim for the gap. Mm-hmm. So by the time you've hit top of curve, there's already people who have you in their sight and are looking to reel you in. Okay, so it's your responsibility then to dictate the next level of excellence and begin pursuing the gap between that pinnacle and the next one. Yeah. So that's not to say we play like zero-sum games. We're not competing against anybody. Like, ultimately, it's about you. But the moment that you kind of resign and get complacent, you can expect that challenges will come and visit you. So if you get to an amount of clients, whatever that amount feels like success to anyone listening to this, whether it's 20, 50, 100, 200, whatever, and you think, oh, okay, I can back off now. That's incorrect, right? There is, for every light, there is a dark. And whilst you might have achieved the light of, okay, so I've got this amount of clients, that was my goal, incredible. Celebrate that, acknowledge it, be proud of what you've achieved and attained, but know there is going to be something in the periphery that you're not looking at because you're infatuated with that metric. So there's going to be something there. And it's obviously, if you've just been aiming for a client number, okay, well, client churn is going to come up. When churn comes up, if you've attached your identity to that number, to that figure, that achievement, then all of a sudden it's going to strip your identity away. It's going to be a huge challenge on an emotional level. So then you've got to be doing the inner work to make sure you're more resilient than that and you're not attaching your self-worth to business metrics. So, there's always a challenge. And most people don't have business problems. They have personal problems. And the challenge in the fitness industry is most people's business is a representation of their personality. So it can feel very, very, very much like a personal attack where people are saying no to you, if clients are churning, if you're getting these big tax bills, if people don't like your Instagram posts. So the greatest proportion of your work on a weekly basis ought to be spent on the top 2 inches, on looking at like, am I in a good space? And am I leading myself appropriately? And as a result, your business will be a reflection of that.
Yeah, there was a couple of things from what you've said there, and a couple of questions were going through my head, but you've kind of just summed it up there. I think, yeah, I think that was a really good point. Just one thing to touch on when you mentioned about getting the message across about the Hard to Kill program. Mm-hmm. When it comes to people can type in coaching, personal training, and anything that'll come up on Instagram, social media, whatever it is. And if you type in weight loss, there's going to be bigger companies out there, like Slimming World, for example. Like people will be able to lose weight on there. Type in weight loss, yes, they're going to lose weight. Do they keep that weight off? That's open to opinion, but you know they're going to be able to lose weight. When we're talking about progressing that a little bit further, about touching on pain points in terms of, yes, I want to lose weight, but actually I want to be better at this. I want to increase my mindset. I want to be a little bit more resilient. I want to be a different person than what I am right now. Or I want to become the person that I think I should have been at this point in time, or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. How do you go about taking that next level and just going that little bit deeper to be like, look, this is how we're going to get from point A to point B, rather than, like what you mentioned, just being a transformation on an Instagram reel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. So again, this is from a very, very, very high contour perspective, and I'll attempt to keep us out of the weeds. But any coaching process needs to have exactly that. It needs to be a process. So any organization, company, coach, trainer needs to understand the promise. So what promise are you making to a client? Like ought to be able to, should's a dangerous word, but you ought to be able to really clearly identify a list of problems that the guys you work with experience, and then the promise of exactly what it is they aspire to achieve. And in your process is a prescription that takes them from these problems. You prescribe this, you add accountability, support, and any other core drivers in your business, and it takes them to that outcome. The Hard to Kill program is enormously niched in terms of who we work with and the problems that we solve. And as you spoke to, most of it is psychological, but we actually have kind of 3 core drivers: physical robustness, mental sharpness, and then high performance leadership. And at the center of that kind of triangle is ultimately becoming hard to kill. So I see it as an inseparable, intertwined matrix, okay? Because if someone comes to you with an issue, let's say they'd been on Weight Watchers, really loose example, and they couldn't keep the weight off, all right? Is it because they don't understand nutrition? They don't know right from wrong? Never. Is it a psychological issue? Always. Almost always. Okay, I like to avoid generalizations, but I would say 99% of the time it's that. So this is, again, a very loose example. Please, if you've been at Weight Watchers, don't apply the program. It might not be for you, but this is a loose example. So we first got to look at, if we're not getting the issues solved that we want in like a nutrition perspective, so that would come under our umbrella of physical robustness, then we then got to look into the mental aspect. So self-awareness, emotional regulation, and ultimately resilience. So from an awareness perspective, well, let's just zoom out. Okay, if they grew up in a household when from the age of 3 years old, they were either, whenever they're upset or they did really well and they were rewarded and acknowledged with food, well, is it any wonder that when they're upset as an adult these days, or when they're celebrating something these days, all they turn to is food? And then they've got this really deep, like, seated psychological relationship with that. Now, we're not clinicians in terms of not diagnosing pathological dysfunction, but we're looking at it from, again, a black and white perspective and saying, well, whenever you're unhappy and stressed, your coping mechanism is this. So here's the awareness piece. That's why you have this tendency. Then obviously we deliver the tools, training, resources, accountability, and support to regulate those. And then training and nutrition is basically the tactical level implementation of that. And then we just run the experiment. So we perceive, right, we need these tools, resources, and accountability metrics in an effort to improve that. Let's fuck around and find out, run the experiment, look at the data. What's it telling us? Okay, that's worked. So we're on the right trajectory now. And then we just can add more pressure to that. We can look at, right, what velocity is appropriate. So that's just like a nutritional intervention as an example. Many people have different, what we call high-risk behaviors or unhelpful coping mechanisms when they're stressed or under pressure, or when there's volatilities, uncertainties, complexities, and ambiguities, which is very common in our C-suite exec guys and high-performing directors. and they tend to just take the easy wrong over the hard right. So we're just asking exploratory questions. Okay, so why do you perceive that is? Let's look at an awareness piece. And then it's our job simply not to become clinicians and therapists, but like really clearly identify, right, this is where that high risk behavior is coming from. We're going to make you aware of that. Then going to install like these regulatory habits into your life, offer you a degree of support and accountability you won't find anywhere else. Then obviously take care of all the S&T, nutrition, all of that kind of training in an effort to make you a better leader to yourself. And then we can compound on that. And then it scales and grows from there. So I'm not sure how thoroughly I've answered your question there, but I'm trying not to get too deeply into the weeds. Yeah. But that's how we would look to solve problems of that nature.
Yeah, and with that, because obviously you mentioned there about CEOs, high performers.
Yeah,
what's kind of the anytime that anything's going to change, people can be a little bit resistant to it and be like, well, this is how I've done it in the past. How do we do it from there? How do you get the buy-in, or provide those solutions and actually allow them to take action? Because I think sometimes it can be a case of, if they've got to that point, yes, they want to do it, but then actually implementing it can be a challenge. How do you kind of work with the high performers to be able to make that change? Because I can imagine that they're used to things happening relatively quickly. They're making decisions, they're doing that, whereas then for their own personal selves, it's a case of, right, okay, how do I then implement this myself?
I understand the perspective there, but that's not the experience that I have with the guys that I work with. I also back myself to communicate with extreme confidence and with certainty and clarity to that person that doesn't fly. So in an effort to get into the program, it's a 3-step process. 2 of those are interviews with me. And it's not egoic in any way. I'm just looking to see like how growth minded is this person, how willing are they to change. And if I perceive as a low readiness to change, again, as we spoke about earlier, I will not trade my happiness and fulfillment for money, irrespective of the amount. And nor will I have my client population, who is a group of incredible people that I care deeply for and I'm enormously proud of, I will not have that polluted with someone who is going to just basically start fires, for want of a better phrase. But I haven't had to deal with that. Again, my experience has been very much the people of that candor are typically quite growth minded, and they've already had the quote unquote breakdown before speaking to me. And they're like, look, I've been trying this, I've been trying that, I've been doing these things that I was trying in my 20s, and none of it's sticking. Can't seem to consistently apply it. I feel like I'm just fucking spinning my wheel trying to do all these different things. I've got so many responsibilities and priorities. I just need some fucking help. I need to know how to figure it out. And that's when they typically come to us. And at that point, they're treated with absolute respect, total gratitude, and we focus more on building trust, because no performance will come without a relationship of trust. So building total trust, and then beginning to implement some of these strategies that give them a relatively quick ROI, because everyone needs buy-in. That's an integral moment in a coaching process. Get them an immediate buy-in. And then we're ultimately focusing more on how people feel rather than how they look. And I was going to say this in response to one of your earlier questions, but most coaches focus on how they feel, how they look as people, and also how their clients look. Now, when we look to nature, there are no structures on earth that focus on growing up before they grow down. Okay. So with our clients, we want to ensure that they have a truly deep-rooted understanding of how they want to feel before they worry about showing off to other people. And that's one of the greatest lessons I give to people is, look, if you all you want to do is build a skyscraper so that everyone's going to look at you and say, oh, look how impressive that is, but there's no foundations and it blows over at the first fucking puff of wind. That's the same as creating, an incredibly impressive body, but having no psychological robustness, no ability to deal with change or adversity or stress or pressure. And the second something doesn't go your way, you hit the fuck it button. You're like Ben Stiller at the end of Dodgeball and just fucking cramming it into your face, right? The structure comes tumbling down. So why don't we spend a little bit of time looking at the fundamental foundations of this and how is it you want to feel? Because that's exponentially more powerful. So when we look to reverse engineer what their success would look like, well, how will your success feel? And most directors and people of that level that we work with are very receptive to that line of thinking. And they're like, okay, I want to feel like this and this and this and this. And yeah, as a result, the things that I want to do, things that people will see are just a byproduct. They're a representation of how I feel internally, because I'm turning up for myself. I'm taking hard right over easy wrongs. That builds confidence. And again, it's an inseparable, intertwined matrix for us. We can't have one without the other. So yeah, that's not been my personal experience. And if it were to be, we've got some incredible high performers inside the program, from tier one special forces operators to people in C-suite at Google, to a CEO of a very well-known UK fitness brand that makes bags, I'll just say it that way. And they're real heavy hitters. So if someone wants to come to me and would perceive that they're more important or they're better or they're whatever than that, I say, well, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just going to say that we've tried it with these guys and it's been really successful with them. So why don't we just try that and see how this goes? And if I'm wrong, fucking hell, I'm wrong. I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm really quite confident this is going to work.
Yeah, definitely. And with that, and why I wanted to ask that question, I want to kind of flip it onto the other side from the coach's point of view. Do you think, because obviously you said there, you've got that confidence, you've got a proven record from there in terms of clarity, in terms of communication, and confident in the service that you're providing. Is that where coaches are going wrong? That they're not being clear in terms of their communication, being able to have that confidence, and then all of a sudden that's when their clients are running into obstacles because they're not having that clear thing of here's the problems, this is how you want to feel, and this is how I can get you there.
Yeah, I mean, pre-frame is worth an ounce of pre-frame is worth a kilo of reframe, right? So referring to an earlier point I made, that again, I've been here, so I know exactly how it feels. When you're in the point of your coaching career whereby you're maybe working with people who you aren't truly aligned with because you kind of need to keep the lights on, you may feel like you lack the conviction to look them straight in the eye and say, well, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how it's going to go, and this is how we're going to operate. Fucking all good. Yeah, okay, cool. It might be a case of, if you want to work with me, it'd be great. And then you kind of haul yourself out from being truthfully honest and say, oh, it's kind of this, like, oh, but I'll do a discount, etc. and so forth. The quicker you can get out of that, the better. And that's a process. And this has become somewhat of a platitude that was once made great by Alex Hormozi, I believe, of like giving yourself evidence of how good you are. Once you can begin to add confidence to your life, then your people will actually respect you more. You're going to have a limiting belief, or many coaches have a limiting belief if they talk out loud about like money and how much their program costs. If they, basically command responsiveness from someone, they're going to ostracize the client, they're not going to want to be there. But the total opposite is true, because the client is coming to you looking for leadership. Okay, that's what they want. They want to put their trust in you, and you want to be able to trust them in return. So if you'd come to me and you're looking to join my program and I was a little bit avoidant, I was looking down, I didn't have great eye contact, I didn't really want to talk about the price, like through reciprocity, like a deep-seated part of your brain is going to be like, this guy is not trustworthy. We call it gut feeling or intuition, but that's, it's an amalgam of actual different, very real psychological and physiological kind of triggers, and you wouldn't necessarily trust me. Whereas whether this program's for you or not for you doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to clearly communicate the value of what my program does, what I would promise to deliver to the right person. This is how much it costs, and this is how we work. And then the right people are like, this sounds like everything I've been looking for. The wrong person, well, in order to kind of sell, if you want to call it that, you've got to have to first polarize. So again, touching on kind of all the points you spoke about earlier, knowing like how much you care, that you're on the right trajectory, that if you have a spiritual goal that's big enough, that you'll overcome any tactical objection of people not wanting to buy a program, so on and so forth. And it can be hard. It can be really fucking hard. There's been days and like years gone past when I've had like 5 applicants in a day and not one of them has been the right one. Fucking hell, am I doing the right thing? You question your own self-worth. My program's a piece of shit. Maybe I'm charging too much. I should lower my price. We've all been there, right? Suck it up. Right? Suck it up. Yeah. You listen to this and you're there right now, fucking hell. Like, go through your client messages and find 20 of your client messages, them screaming how good you are, how much the program's changed their life. Right? And if you haven't got that, that's the first problem you need to look at. But you probably have, you're just discounting it because you've got a cognitive distorted belief that you're not good enough. But go back through and find fucking evidence of where you've changed people's lives. And next time you're speaking to a client who's applying to you, like, no, like, this is what I do and it will change your fucking life. It's X amount of pounds. Doesn't make that much of a difference to me. But I fucking guarantee it will change yours. What are we going to do about it? And they either want it or they don't.
Yeah. One thing that you said on there, like what you said about, turning it into a sales call. I was nodding as you were talking because I always remember when I very first started coaching, I actually, he was an ex-semi-professional rugby player, and he was quite high up working for banks. And how he described his job was, if things weren't going well, he would basically go in and sort it out. And I was thinking, oh God, how am I gonna train this guy? And he said, right, this is what I want. was pretty clear, had a clear vision of it. And I was like, right, I'm gonna have to. I was like honest with him, said, and one of the best things he said to me when he got to the point where he went to be, he went, "Yeah, I doubted you at first, but you're all right, you aren't you?" And from there, I was like, "Do you know what? Actually, that was pretty good." And I ended up training. I think I trained him for about 4 years before he moved away.
Yeah.
And I think for things like that, having that honesty and just being like, look, setting your stall out, and then speaking to them how they want to be speak. I think he's a really powerful tool, because then exactly like what you said, you can look back now and I can say, yeah, I did a good job of that. I've got the messages from that.
Yeah.
With the progression from that, when we're talking about, and when you mentioned there about trying to sell, is that where you think number one, clients are looking at, because they're feeling as though they're always going to get sold to, rather than actually looking as, look, I can genuinely help you. The solutions here. I've got the records to prove it. And then do you think that's where coaches and personal trainers are making it too hard to filter through, because they're just trying to sell anything and everything, rather than actually trying to provide solutions?
Yeah. And the first thing I do is actually just return to your story about training that rugby player, by the way. Like, that's a fantastic example of doing it the right way, of just being like, maybe you were shitting your boots, but we call it the swan effect, like cool, calm, collected on the surface, but flapping like fuck under water. Just have a word with yourself, just breathe and be like, okay. Because again, understand, people are coming to you for accountability. And if they've come to you for accountability and the first thing you do is roll over, they're like, well, why would I pay you? Of course I'm not going to fucking pay you that money, dickhead. Like, you haven't demonstrated you'll do what you said you would do. But the first thing you have to do is step up and say, no, I will hold you accountable. I'm not going to be hurtful. I'm going to be very honest to you. And if people give you excuses, you just say, well, how's that working out for you, mate?
Yeah. Do you know what? That actually happened, and I'll never ever forget this. He was quite a big guy, and I always remember he had a Burger King and he had a KFC, and I was like, he said, "Oh, I feel rubbish," and I was like, "Well, no wonder you feel rubbish. You've had that." And I said it so quickly afterwards. He just looked at me, and I was thinking, "Oh, what's he going to say?" But actually, he was like, yeah, do you know what? You're right. That's why I feel rubbish. And it's just that thing of saying it. And I'll never forget that. It was in our check-in. It was in the meeting room. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah, 100%. That's sometimes what they need. Knowing your clients is obviously important. The level that we work with means they're normally quite responsive to kind of authoritative feedback. Not that we tell people what to do or boss them about, but we can send straight arrows. It's well received. However, that's not the case of everybody. So you kind of got to know your people and know the room. But in response to your question, I think this comes if I'm honest, as a result of a lot of like kind of mentors in the market now who are wanting to create their own success metrics, which is, they take people from X to X income. So like was earning 10K per month, whatever, in 90 days, all that sort of stuff. So then coaches are seeing that as the metric of success and say, oh, I've got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. And whenever you go into these mentor environments, it's the same as if you were going to try and get a quick win with a client, right? If a client came to you, and neither you or I would do this, hopefully, but if a client came to you and was like, right, okay, I want to lose 10 kilos of fat in fucking 6 weeks, you're like, yep, we'll fucking do that, and just starve the ass off them, cardio them to death. And on paper, you've achieved success, even though you've done something that's a little bit, very unsustainable, borderline dangerous, a little bit immoral, and ultimately is going to set that person up for further like hardships and difficulties and challenge relationships with the body image and training, all that sort of stuff. Well, business mentors are also an unregulated force, and they're doing exactly the same. So people are going to them, they're like, right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to bang out a fucking 5130 every fucking day. A 5130, those who don't know, is I'm looking for a number of people to solve one problem in the next X amount of days. So it's normally you'll see coach on Instagram, like, I'm looking for 5 guys you want to get ripped in the next 90 days. Right. It's a recipe as old as time. It's called a 5130. And most mentors would say, right, you're going to fucking post this out there every day. And because that coach has maybe never actually marketed to their audience before, it'll be really receptive, it'll be really warm, but it will run out like that. Because you'll basically imagine if I had like a piano, right, and I was just playing one key over and over and over and over and over and over again. Within about 15 strikes, you'd have just kind of tuned it out. Their audience would do the same, but they don't know anything else to do. So they just keep pressing the same key over and over and over and over again. Then you've got all these coaches in the industry who all believe the metric of success is to make X amount of money in X amount of months, all employing the same tactics, because all of these people, and to be totally transparent, I've been in some very high level business on entrepreneurial mastermind groups, all these people, I'm totally honest with you now, we're always in the bottom third. I know pretty much all of them. We're in the bottom third of that room, that environment, and have now gone out to become business mentors. So they're all using the same strategies and tactics. So then, by order of effect, they've got maybe 50 clients who are then all using the same stuff. So that's why the industry is all people doing the same stuff. It's like, well, again, marketing 101, zig when they zag. So just zoom out and say, right, well, I'm actually looking for 5 clients who want to solve one problem in the next 30 days. And if that is legit and that is genuinely accurate, show me the problems that you articulate it, show me your promise and the process, and show me the outcome. And then find a way to demonstrate you've done that with clients, and that you've been authentic and that you care. Add a little bit of your personality and character into that. And I guarantee you'll get exponentially more people knocking on your door being like, yeah, I'm interested in what you do, mate. Can we maybe have a chat about that? So it's exponentially more authentic than just hammering these hard sales tactics. Because again, I spoke about getting into the Hard to Kill program. We legitimately call it a fit call. Like, I'm going into it. By the point, if you've got to the final conversation with me, it's going to be about an hour on Zoom. If it's a fit, I'm expecting that you and I are going to work together. I'm not expecting I'm going to have to hard sell or pressurize you. And if I feel like I'm going to have to, I'm like, this is not for you. Like, if we've gone through all that, and I've demonstrated an understanding of your problems, I know how to solve them, and this is what you want to achieve, and we've both agreed on that, and this is how the program works, and that's how we take you across this process, and this is the exchange in value. If you're comfortable with that, let's go ahead. At no point is it, well, you're a piece of shit if you don't work with me, or you've got to do it, you're going to be a failure without me, or this, that, and the other. But again, like, it's just the landscape of industry, or a portion of the industry at the moment, and it's very easy for coaches to fall into it because the behavior is rewarded, because if you do it, you get more money. But it's just a little bit short-sighted.
Yeah. And I think with that as well, in terms of numbers games of just trying to get as many people in, you're actually wasting a lot of time, because you're actually then going to try and find more clients and then trying to do more. Whereas actually, like what you mentioned there, by the time it gets to that final call, 9 times out of 10 or 10 out of 10, that's going to be a paying client, because they've got to that point. Unless something goes, drastically wrong for that final call, and then at least then, that they're going to be bought in, like what we touched on earlier. The one thing that I wanted to touch on as well is, we've spoken a lot about, attracting clients, talking to them, and working with them. How do you sustain that repeatable success, so that the client, keeps working with you? Because, it'll get to a point where they came with a problem and that solution's being solved. And then a little bit like what you mentioned about as a coach, you're always trying to look for that gap, look for that next thing. How do you have that repeatable success?
I think it's multifactorial. The first caveat is that, it's the paradox of coaching is that, eventually all clients are going to stop working with you, and having that in the back of your mind, that when you're their coach, you're not their friend, and when you're their friend, you're not their coach. And not taking it as a personal affront or a personal shortcoming or failing when clients are eventually like, mate, this has been incredible and I'm good to go. That's just going to happen, right? And be very, very proud and accepting. And again, this is why we don't assign success to how many clients you work with, because people are going to actually succeed and achieve. Incredible. That's what we want to do. That's the whole goal. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I truly believe in not necessarily leading from the front, because the chances are that, certainly in my world, like, a lot of my clients are a lot fitter than me. Many are a lot stronger than me. A lot of them earn a lot more money than me. It's not about leading from the front and you having to be better, but it's about leading by example. So as long as you're even one page ahead in areas of life, in terms of like how you are pushing yourself, how you live your life, if you're being a truly aspirational identity and you're learning from that, and then you're giving those learnings back, then you're always going to be valuable. That's it. Like, valuable people are never going to struggle to retain clients. So then it's a simple case of, like, if we look at the matrix of, like, okay, so you've got a client attraction, client conversion, client delivery. If we look into client delivery, well, most coaches, I'm sorry to say, spend a disproportionate wealth of their time trying to just market to new people on Instagram and social media and Facebook, so they can hit those vanity metrics. Is that, well, how much time are you spending looking at your delivery pipeline? So we recently finished the entire year annual plan for 2024 of, like, everything we're going to deliver internally for the whole of 2024. And then clients are like, well, I'm in a great place, but they're discussing that then and that then and that then. Oh, I want to do that, and I'd love to learn more about that. So you can kind of think of it as internal marketing if you want, but it's just there's so much to be spoken about in the pursuit of true peak performance. And if you're pushing the envelope yourself and you're learning more lessons and you're putting yourself in new rooms and challenging environments and pushing your own boundaries and doing things and then like retrospectively learning from it and communicating how that can improve other people's lives, etc. and so forth. And then you make like a really robust pipeline inside that is continuing to lead your clients towards excellence and towards their massive transformational purpose, then it's not necessarily about elongating their lifespan because it's a value to your MRR, your fucking bank balance, but it's because you've got so much more left to teach them. And then again, if people are like, I'm not sure if the program's for me, because that's why clients are wanting to leave, is because they're not seeing an exchange in value anymore. They're like, you're not teaching me anything, I've achieved it, so I don't want to go anymore. Then it just becomes a conversation of basically an argument of please don't leave, which is just it's not great, if I'm being really honest. Whereas if you know, like, okay, cool, like, well, here's where you're at and let's celebrate what you've achieved so far and what do you think is not quite finished and what would your future aspirations be? And if that all checks out, you're like, mate, well, I'm proud of you. You've absolutely achieved everything you ever wanted to. It's all nailed down. Whereas if it's a conversation of, right, you're proud of these achievements and you've done really well here, but you a bit of unfinished business and you feel like this might be in your future, well, actually next month inside the program, we're discussing this and this. So do you feel like it might make sense to like, actually, fucking fair play. Like I hadn't even thought of that. Let's do that. So, clients are going to go for undulations. They're going to go through challenges. There's going to be black swan events. They're going to buy houses, have babies, all that sort of stuff that like just strains and challenges their financials, and coaching is a luxury for many people. But ensuring that you're actually equipping them, educating them, arming them, preparing them, upskilling them, making them feel heard, making them feel safe, they're part of a community and they're part of an environment, is actually, you can create a pressure drain in their life for them. You can be their third space where it's their thing and their community and their mates and their chat and their fucking self-development. And again, it's not about the commercial element. It's just like, if you love what you do and you have that vision of the person you aspire to become and what your company's going to do, then it just feels a lot more genuine and authentic than just trying to realign people because you're scared that you're not going to make enough money that month.
Yeah, definitely. I think from everything that we've spoken about, I think that was quite a good sum up. Actually, it kind of came full circle on that. I really liked, by offering value, being valuable. People are always going to want to work with you because there's that exchange there. Whereas again, from what I've read and podcasts and those sorts of things, people can lose interest in what they're doing because they're not getting that value from it. They can't see what they're getting out of it, and I think that's where sometimes coaches can work on that a little bit more.
It's coaches become complacent, right? We're very quick to accuse. Well, maybe not so much myself, but I see a lot of coaches and I hear from a lot of coaches who are very quick to accuse clients of complacency of, they've done this amount and now they think they've completed it. It's like, well, have you ever inverted that and looked at your level of complacency, i.e. you worked really hard and had this amazing Instagram reel and then you got them on a call, you pressure sold them, you got them in, and then you just put them in your program and forgotten about them. Like, it's a relationship. There is no performance without trust. Okay. And if what you're delivering is constant, valuable, genuine, and of genuine worth to them, then it's kind of like a marriage, right? If you were to get married, you don't say at the aisle like, "Oh, I love you," and then just not say it again for the next 20 years. You gotta keep like, know your people, like genuinely care about them, know where they're at in life, what they aspire to achieve, communicate with them, like create a community that they feel part of and that they also see value in. And then you have that conversation a lot less often of, "Oh, I don't see the value in this anymore." Because that's the true intent behind a lot of clients who want to leave early. He's like, "Oh yeah, this has come up. I don't want to do it anymore." Sometimes obviously it's genuine. And again, there's these black swan events and we can't help that. And we can only be compassionate and empathetic to people when those situations happen in their life. But if coaches are hearing that a lot, well, you've got to be really honest with yourself and say, well, in what way are you nurturing that relationship? In what way are you showing them trust and receiving trust? In what way are you still being valuable to them? Have you just got complacent, chucked them in a program and forgotten about them?
Yeah, I think that's really key. You've kind of thrown a couple of words of wisdom out there, but it's been awesome chatting with you, Mark. There's every time that you've spoken, there's been 2 or 3 questions that I've wanted to fire out of my head. So I've tried to say the ones that came to my head first. But the last question that I like to ask, from everything that we've spoken about today, for everyone listening, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom? I know you've already thrown out a few.
Who am I speaking to with this? Who would be that?
I think a lot of the podcasts and episodes are people interested in training, want to develop their training. But I think actually where the conversation's gone today, I think it'd be really helpful for the coaches listening. So the words of wisdom from everything that we've chatted about today.
Yeah. So, firstly, sorry to people who came here for training chat because I'm not doing a job with that. Secondly, coaches, essentially, you are my people. Like I'm enormously passionate about the industry of coaching. I believe that as a collective, as a cohort, we ought to be collaborating more than competing. I think as a population, we can do more. We can be better, and I would encourage you to see yourself as part of that movement to gain the respect of people, because coaching's a bit of a joke to a lot of people, right? Let's fucking say it how it is. So let's have more respect for ourselves, for our craft, what it is we do, because within the confines of your 2 ears is the information and the power to change another human life. Take that responsibility very, very seriously, and just accept the fact that you can have fun with this as well. Like, it gives you a life that many will never be able to experience, like freedom from so many different types of stress, the freedom to go and do things like the Marathon des Sables, which has been a pipe dream for a long time, and take those, because believe it or not, these in years to come, these will be the good old days when you're sat there like your head in your hands, fucking working your ass off. I've had tears, I've had fucking all sorts, like, trust me. And you're crying out, is this worth it? Am I doing the right thing? Like, does anyone even care? These will be looked back at with rose-tinted spectacles. These are the good old days. Okay, so find a way to gamify it and know that what you are doing has the power to change human life. And it sounds like a bit of a cliche, and it sounds like it is a cliche. It's an entire cliche, but like, find a way to create some belief in yourself and what it is you're capable of doing. And start really fucking small. Start turning up, doing things that you do find very uncomfortable, that do challenge your limiting beliefs, and then just continue to persevere with those. That would probably be the best bit of advice I could give. I could give a lot of advice to coaches. Again, I'm passionate about coaches doing really well, and overturning this bad reputation that we seem to have in the world. But yeah, it all starts with us. Like, we need to uphold higher standards for ourselves. We need to collaborate more than we compete in order to help others hold themselves to higher standards when they're struggling, because otherwise it becomes a race to the bottom, and that's not good for anybody.
Yeah, I think that was you've had some really awesome words of wisdom throughout the entire chat. I can see the passion that you've got for this topic, and I know obviously you spoke about the topics that I sent over originally, but I think there's some really, really useful information in there. If anyone's got any questions about what we've chatted about today, want to reach out to you and see the content you put out there, where could people reach you or find you?
So I appreciate that. I am going to add a bit of a caveat here. Number one, I'm not a business mentor. Please do not reach out to me with business mentor. Number two, I'm a work in progress. We are all just fucking winging it. I do not have all the answers. I do not have it all figured out. I've just made a lot of mistakes and found a way to learn from them, right? So I'm not pretending that I fucking know it all. Far from it. But if you want to see what I do, how I do it, have a chat, any questions, genuinely any questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can find me on Instagram at Marc_Rhodes_HTK. That will also take you to Threads as well, if Threads is your thing. Threads is weird, isn't it? I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, it's like a new style of Twitter. Yeah,
it's weird. It's kind of weird. Also, we've got a YouTube whereby the podcast is hosted, and we did a full, I think it was like a 10-part series on the preparation for the Marathon des Sables. So you can see all that. If you just type in Marc Rhodes Hard to Kill on YouTube, on Spotify, or any good podcast provider, so Spotify, Apple, Amazon. If you type in the Hard to Kill podcast, Marc Rhodes, again, that will come up. I think with 25 episodes in now. So those are the main places you can find me. Yeah.
Nice. I've started watching about your Marathon des Sables as well. I'm working through that. It's cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Marc, for taking the time to jump on. Like I say, I feel like I left a couple of questions off the table there. But yeah, really, really enjoyed. Been looking forward to chatting to you since we got it booked in. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.
Thank you, mate.